AnimeSecrets.org, the answer to all your burning questions.
Hey, this is Nicole with Anime Declassified, and today I'm going to be interviewing J. Michael Tatum.
So, what initially got you into voice acting necessarily?
Just being an actor, really, I think, which is both true and untrue. I did a lot of, well, it's a long story, so let me try to, parse it down. When I was very little, I had a speech impediment, a very bad speech impediment, so much so that I very rarely spoke. I've been making up for lost time ever since, so no worries. But my speech therapist and I discovered that if I had something to read from, like to recite or something I could commit to memory, the stutter tended to disappear. So she, who had ties to the theater, were like, well, you should try your hand at some community theater, do this. They're always looking for fresh blood. So I just kind of did it, and I loved it. I just loved being on stage. So theater, the very concept of acting kind of gave me my voice, quite literally. And so that's just part one.
Yeah, if you have more to go on.
So I did it for years and years and years as a kid. And then I was also, though, really, really into music. My grandfather was a pianist, so I started playing when I was very young. And there came a dreadful moment in my high school years where I had to decide, did I want to pursue music or did I want to pursue acting? And I just flipped a coin and decided, we'll go with music. I went to conservatory for music. It did not do very well. I didn't do very well in the conservatory environment, so I dropped out. Kids, stay in school, and just sort of fell back on a number of jobs that were just I wasn't skilled or anything like that. I kind of just had this existence. I had an office job for a number of years, wound up working at an ad agency, which lovely people, but I didn't really belong, and I certainly wasn't good at it. And then a friend of mine who happened to work for Funimation, which is local for me, local for us here. We're in Dallas. I keep forgetting we're home. Called me up one day and said, "Hey, I need some voices that do you want to come in and work on this show?" And I was like, "Oh, I haven't acted in 10 years." He's like, "Well, it's all right. It's great. If you come in, if you suck, we'll laugh and never speak of it again. Just whatever." and I politely declined because I just couldn't get my head around the idea. And I'm like, well, it's voice acting. I've never done voice acting, and that's so much harder than other kinds of acting. So I don't know that I think it'll be a waste of your time just getting me in there because I don't think I'll do very well. So I was like, all right. Hang up the phone. The next day he calls me again. So, hey, I have this show I'm working on. Would you like to kind of be part of it? And I'm like, what do we? And this was our exchange every day for almost 2 weeks. Every day, him pretending like we hadn't had the conversation the day prior, and getting scarier and scarier each time. So what began with hey, do you want to come in, ended up with you're coming in or I'm breaking your goddamn kneecaps, and kind of thing. Because Bevins is the name of the gentleman, right. So Christopher Bevins is the name of the gentleman, a dear friend of mine. It's an actor and writer and a brilliant ADR director, and he can be a scary guy. He's such a sweetheart, but when he's directing, man, he's a taskmaster. And so I learned very quickly, get the line writer, we kill this puppy kind of thing.
Oh wow, okay.
not really, but he's intense, and it's what makes him such a good director. So I came in for an audition, what I thought was just your average everyday audition, and I had no idea how it worked. I'm like, do I get in the booth? And I'm like, okay, we're going to actually match animation, and I'm going to read from an ADR script, which is a very different animal than other types of scripts because there's a lot of technical jargon in there that doesn't cross over to other screenplays or playbooks. So I just was completely lost, and it was boot camp for me for those 4 hours. And then we were done. I got out of the booth, true story, and I was confident I had made an ass of myself, and he would now leave me alone so I can go back to my crappy day job life. And I signed some papers that I thought were NDAs. It was my first mistake. I didn't read them very closely. Oh, no. And I said something to the tune of, how the hell do you people at Funimation get anything done if it takes you 4 hours to audition every single part? He's like, no, it didn't. It took us 10 minutes. We've actually just recorded the first 6 episodes, and you just signed a contract, so screw you. You're an actor now.
Oh my God.
And that was the role of Rikichi in Samurai 7, which was my very first thing I ever did as a voice actor.
That's
and then
only one I've seen.
that was an awesome time for your music.
That was a great time.
Dun dun dun. That's
twist.
Dramatic prairie dog turn. So yeah, that's how I became a voice actor, and then I started just doing it on the side for several years, and then somebody said, "Hey, do you want to direct?" because I just happened to be playing the bad guy in one of those huge ensemble pieces where the bad guy's really the only character that knows what's going on.
Right.
So they said, well, hey, the director has to go and take a job in New York, so they're not going to be here to finish the latter half of the series. Do you want to do it? I'm like, sure, why not? Because, why not? I like throwing caution to the wind. So I quit my day job and became a full-time voice actor, director, and had a couple writers in the booth as well that kind of liked my style and said, hey, do you want to work as a writer? I'm like, yeah. So I've been a very, very busy bee ever since. It has been it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And it feels like it just started yesterday. I'm still kind of waiting for someone to pinch me and to wake up. It's like, ow! And suddenly wake up in my cube farm job from all those years ago. So it's pretty crazy.
So you
luck.
feel like you've found your calling?
I hope so, because I'm not very good at anything else. I am not what you call life competent, so I need acting. It's like that way I can just pretend.
So over the 10 years, like, what would you say has been your favorite experience or your favorite character even?
It's really hard to parse it down to qualify like favorites, because I think as an actor, acting is very like the craft of acting is very close to my heart. I've been fascinated by it since I was very little because it kind of introduced me to the world, and for me it was all about cultivating perspectives and inhabiting minds not your own, so that you could learn something about yourself in the process and kind of enlarge your sense of you and the world and your place in it. So it was really hard to, even like the little characters that you spend like maybe 2 hours on, and that's all you ever get with them, because they're like an episodic character or a one-off, or the guard A that says freeze and then gets shot and dies. They all become kind of part of you in a way, at least for me. And so they all like get lodged in your psyche permanently. And so if I pick a favorite, I feel really guilty. It's like I feel like the thing I always say is if I pick a favorite, this character, then I'll go to my hotel room later and like be surrounded in my head by like 80 characters going, you're a bastard, Tatum. So I can't pick. I think that you find something of yourself in every character, and that's the joy of it, really, is even this character that may be nothing like you on the surface, that you're like, well, when you dig a little deeper, no, there's some similarities there. So you learn something about yourself even with the little characters. Sometimes more with the little characters because it's more intense. You don't have the arc that longer characters do, so you have just one shot to get it right. So it's very hit the ground running, and so sometimes those can be more memorable even than the long-lived characters that you work on for years and years and years. So, oh yay, my coffee is here. But yeah, so I can't pick a favorite really. I can pick one that I think changed me the most as an actor because of how intense and how and what an education it was. And that is Okabe from Steins Gate. Steins Gate was one of my only experiences being both the lead writer, not head writer, that's John Bergmeyer, but lead writer. Along with the wonderful and sublime Patrick Seitz, who is just a great person and a wonderful person to...
There's one already in there.
Okay, thank you. And to work on that show, which is really... Steins Gate is a very raw, emotional experience. It's also very, like, the main character is always at 10. Whether he's screaming or crying or laughing or being crazy, he's an emotionally intense character. And I wrote him and was like, I do not envy the poor bastard that has to breathe life into this in the booth. And then it was me, and I'm like, oh, damn it, And there was a great deal of overlap between the writing process and the recording. So, like, the first 6 scripts were done when we started recording, but then there remains another, 3 sets of 6. So while we were recording, I'm working on the next quarter of the series, and so my days for about 4 to 5 months, maybe even 6, consisted of getting up, recording Okabe for about 6 to 8 hours, coming home, and then working for another 5 to 6 hours on a script. And because the show is all about time travel and what happens when you cross timelines and revisiting the same stuff over and over again, my experience of the show was very, very similar to Okabe's experience of his reality. Yeah. So I was like, I've been here before.
Yeah.
Deja vu, And I had some moments. There's a very harrowing moment. I've probably told this story elsewhere millions of times, but I love it. It's there's an episode. I think it's episode 14. Maybe 13. They all kind of run together for me because of just how real it was. But without giving anything away, the character is basically, knows that something terrible is about to happen, and he's sort of pleading desperately for the life of his best friend at peril to his own, and he feels completely powerless, and he's crying, and there's nothing he can do. And he's very arrogant, and very, very high energy, fun, arrogant kind of guy, but the sort of friend that you keep around because you like watching them wear themselves out. And suddenly he doesn't have access to that anymore. That sort of way, that mode doesn't work in this situation. So he's being very real and kind of admitting to himself in a very, very, very just incredibly affecting way that he's nothing, that, please just don't do this. And it's really, like, when I wrote the episode, I was so moved by the Seiyu's performance as Okabe that I was crying as I wrote it. And then I'm like, I don't know if I have the chops to do this in the booth. And about 5 weeks later, it was time to do it, and we did. And I just, because I'd been Okabe for so long at that point and never been able to kind of slough him off at the end of the day because I'd have to go home and write, I just lost it in the booth and started crying and having a bit of a little breakdown, which I'm like, okay, this is psychotic. This is not acting anymore. This is getting a little too realsy. And my director, the wonderful Colleen Klinkenbeard, who was so good. I'm very proud of having been part of that project because of her skill as a director. Just made it one of the best dubs I've ever seen. But she's like, honey, why don't you come out of the booth for a little bit and splash some water in your face, walk around the building for a little bit. Like, just let's find Michael again.
Yeah.
And I came back ready to do the scene again, dreading it. And she's like, good news, everything you just did worked. So if you're happy with the world knowing what J. Michael Tatum sounds like when he's having a breakdown, can we use that? And I'm like, yes, please. I don't want to do this again. So if anyone wants to hear me have a genuine breakdown, please watch Steins Gate. I had several genuine breakdowns. That was just the first of many. But yeah, but that role taught me a lot about myself, about my own limits as an actor, in terms of like, what can I do before it suddenly isn't acting anymore and something a little too risky, a little too crazy. But loved it. One of the most rewarding.
Another question, like, would you prefer, like, do you much rather prefer the comedic roles or the more serious roles?
That's a good question. They both have their merits. I think Bill Murray said one time that he preferred doing comedy because comedy is very hard. Drama, I feel like, is everyone can relate to dramatic things. I mean, most of us spend, and Bill Murray, again, to kind of paraphrase the great Bill Murray's quote, he said, most people in life are generally closer to tears than they are to laughter in day-to-day life, so it's easier to get them to cry than it is to make them laugh. And I feel that way. Like, comedy takes just the right timing, just the right phrase, just the right balance of excess versus, understatement. And drama requires the same thing, but you've got a broader range available to you. Like, you can sort of milk a dramatic moment a little longer, and it's still going to be just as effective, or not lose any of its potency. But comedic timing, the same scene has to be just right, or it doesn't feel genuine, and the audience won't laugh. So the comedic characters are often far more difficult. They're usually much higher energy. Yeah. Dramatic characters have their spikes, where there's suddenly really intense moments because, we've been waiting for them to finally just unload, and they finally do, but they spend the rest of the time kind of preparing for that moment. Whereas comedic characters, like, I think of someone like Isaac from Bakano or Kamui from D. Gray Man, who are very high energy and who are always hysterical. They don't have an arc in the sense that we see them change. They're kind of they're sort of the static characters that are there to sort of be the sort of pylons that comment on everything else going on in the drama and to kind of be the relief. And those are really, really fun, but that's quite a responsibility, when all this stuff is going on, and your job is to kind of come in with the hat and dance and be like, But I love the comedic characters. One of my favorite characters in all time that I hope to play when I'm old and fat is Falstaff, Sir John Falstaff from the Henry plays of Shakespeare, who's one of the greatest characters ever written. The comedic character par excellence. So yeah. So I can't choose, but I think the comedic roles are probably more rewarding, because if you get it right, you're like, there's no denying that if you hear an audience of people just roaring with laughter, there's nothing compares to that. People don't roar when they cry.
No,
so it's not as instantly gratifying. Like if they're bawling in the audience, if they roar when they cry, that would make me feel very uncomfortable. Like if you hear a bunch of people in the audience like going you feel great if that was your intention, right? Yeah. But if you just hear them all going, that's disruptive. I can't continue,
So, would you say that you would, when you get new material or you get a new role, do you take any inspiration from the previous sub at all, or do you just take it all on yourself? And
we take a lot, not so much the subs. The subs usually come out around the same time, or at least I'm usually working on them as an adaptive writer frequently before. I'm in a lot of the shows that I write, so I feel like, odd coincidence. Oh yes, give Tatum this role, because he's the only one that can pronounce these words. Haha. I might have had something to do with that, but But the Japanese, the original Seiyu performance are very, very important to dub actors because we focus on their emotion. Frequently, if, for example, as an actor, and this is more often the case than not, if you don't have any experience of the show before coming in, you don't get, it's not like any other sort of production where you have a few days or even weeks to prepare. You come in and the director tells you, okay, so 5 minutes, here's what's going on, here's the character, boom, do it. And they usually hire you because they know that this type of character has come up for you before. Like it kind of, this is a trope that falls well within what we call your wheelhouse, the characters that you could do in your sleep. Mm-hmm. Just because that's just, they fall very close to where you sit naturally, or you've done them so often that you know that. You know what this character's role in the dynamic is. So you come in and you just have to kind of, as I said earlier, hit the ground running. And without the Japanese, without being able to watch the Japanese, it's impossible. So we focus very, we always, we preview every scene in Japanese and really kind of talk for a moment about, okay, do you see what the Seiyu is doing there? Because there are, and this is something, again, I learned as an adaptive writer, there are elements of every story and every performance that transcends the language barrier. And a good actor is able to communicate something to you, whatever the language it is. And so I may not understand exactly what's being said in Japanese, but I can tell the tone, the timbre, and it helps inform, what I need to. And it's great because it gives me that element of transcendence, the thing that you have to focus on, the subtext, the stuff that makes it so dramatic, that falls outside of the province of words, that you're able to kind of latch onto and be like, all right, I'm going to take that spirit and put it behind my English words and go. So the Japanese seiyus are remarkably important. That's why I'm always so honored when I get to meet one, because I'm like, thank you, because without you, I would not have had my way into this character. So,
That's a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
I had a question, but it slipped my mind. Do you have any?
So where do you see the future of voice acting necessarily going?
I think it's funny how it's getting better and better, I think. When you look at dubs over the past 20 years and how much they've improved just because of technology. It used to be back in the day that we recorded on loops, so we had less time and far fewer resources to get the line right. You basically, they'd call you up and be like, all right, we have this much tape, don't screw it up kind of thing. But now we have Pro Tools and digital media, which has really helped us and have kind of streamlined the process so we can focus more on making it very organic. Voice acting is difficult for a lot of reasons, and let me kind of veer for a minute off course just to make a point, but I'll try to bring it back home. A lot of people, because of the position I'm in, will say, hey, I want to be a voice actor. How do I do that? And it's a very sincere question, of course, and I love getting asked sometimes because I assume they think I'm a good actor, or they wouldn't want to know how I did it, because unless they just writing negative example, what not to do. Okay, what does Tatum say? Okay, not do that. But I caution people against wanting to be a voice actor as a fallback from being other kinds of actor. Because for me, voice acting is just one kind of acting. They're all acting, and the awkward word is acting. And like all kinds of every craft out there, there's kind of a core set of a sort of core vocabulary of skills that you need under your belt that will apply across the board in whatever specific avenue or venue you find yourself in. So people that want to be voice actors because they don't feel they'd be very good on stage or on camera or whatever are kind of going about it backwards. I feel very strongly from experience that unless you're comfortable on stage or on front of a camera, other sorts of acting, what we think of as more traditional types of acting in our society, if you're not comfortable in those contexts, voice acting is going to be that much more closed off to you, because when you're bringing a character to life, say on stage, you have costumes, you have sets, you have other actors working off of you in real time and in this very organic sense. You also have weeks and weeks of rehearsal, all of which contribute to creating this imaginative space and giving the sort of reality to the character and the situation they're in. When you're voice acting, you are in a box with foam and a microphone, and you have some animation and you have a script, but you're not with any other actors. They may not even be recorded yet, so you may be recording in a vacuum. So you have to tap even deeper to make it real for yourself. Like, you are on your own. I mean, you have the director and the engineer and all that, but I mean, you are on your own. Like, there is nothing but your voice that you can use. So you may be wonderful on stage, but if you don't know how to channel all the things you would use on stage into just your voice and to make that communicate the character, you're dead in the water. So it's kind of like someone's being like, you may be a wonderful carpenter, but suddenly someone says, okay, build me a house, but you're only allowed to use a hammer. not even nails, just a hammer. That's all you get. Now build me this wonderful house. And that's kind of, so if you're not an accomplished carpenter, you have no hope of doing that. So that's kind of what I feel. So acting, and so the future of voice acting, to get back to your question, is I think people are beginning to realize voice acting, dub acting in particular, used to be kind of considered like the lowest of the low. It was like, I think, under porn actors and you know, people that appear on those crappy late night television commercials. Which I've been one of them, I'm not going to lie. So, not the porn part, no. That's later in my career. I'm climbing the ladder, you see. But I feel like people, over the years, like a lot of anime have come out that have sort of crossed into pop culture awareness at large, into the mainstream, and have become aware, and the dubs have gotten a lot of love, and so people are like, wow, real actors do that. Like, this is another kind of acting. So, you know, when film became a thing, you know, 100 so years, like, all the stage actors were like, well, film is where you go when you can't act on stage, you know, and then film actors are now saying, well, television is where you go when you can't act on film, and people are like, oh, well, dubs are where you go when you can't act on on television. So, but I feel like now, like, dubs and voice acting in
Hey, you! Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos. You can also check out Anime Secrets on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. Do you want more than that? I know you do. Then go to our website where you can see daily updates and articles and exclusive interviews.